Welcome in. This is Head on a Swivel. We're going to be talking about Mississippi State tonight. I'm Chris. He's Scott. What's Georgia got to do this coming weekend, tomorrow actually, to put four quarters together? Stay tuned. We got a lot for you.
Georgia Sports Autographs is built by collectors for collectors. They know what fans want because they've been in your shoes, hunting for that perfect piece, the right signature, in the right spot. At every signing, Georgia Sports Autographs make sure it's done right, using the proper ink, following best practices, and paying attention to every detail so you end up with a product you'll be proud to display. They've already worked with many of Georgia's top athletes, and their network gives them access to just about anything you can imagine. If you don't see it listed, don't assume it can't be done. Chances are they can get it for you. Georgia Sports Autograph tests themselves with every event, always improving, always delivering for the ultimate addition to your collection. Trust the team that treats every autograph like its own. Georgia Sports Autographs, where every signature tells a story.
Welcome into Coach Hayes Huddle. Alongside me is Scott Green. He's becoming one of my regulars on the show. Definitely appreciate you being with me, Scott. How you doing this evening, my friend?
I'm doing good. I appreciate you having me, Coach.
No problem. I'm definitely loving the consistency that we're showing on the show. Let's hope that we can see that consistency that this weekend with our Georgia Bulldogs, no doubt. I want to first jump into Mississippi State. We obviously are coming into a situation where we've just had the college football playoff bracket shown to us this past week on Tuesday. We're sitting at the number 5 spot, sitting pretty basically where I think is a good sweet spot, as you mentioned a while ago. You know, when I think about Mississippi State, though, I was really high on them as the year started because I'm a Jeff Lebby fan. And when I saw what they were doing with the win over Arizona State and coming into SEC play with Tennessee coming into their house, I had them beating Tennessee, and they almost did it. They've played two, basically, if you break it up, they've played two East teams, two West teams, the way I look at it. They played both Texas teams, Texas A&M, Texas. They've played Florida and Tennessee. They were 0-4 going into the Arkansas. Finally got their first SEC win. But, I mean, realistically, other than Texas A&M pretty much putting the belt to ass to them, the other three were very winnable for Mississippi State. We saw what they did against Tennessee. We saw what they did against Texas. And honestly, against Florida, the score was roughly about what we beat Florida by. It was a 23-21 loss to Florida. And I really think, you look at that and you go, okay, this team could easily have one, maybe two losses and be sitting at 6-2 right now as we come into Starkville. I really think that Coach Smart is taking this the right way. And honestly, I know a lot of people would love to look over the top of Mississippi State, but if I'm sitting in the press conference just like Coach Smart is, I don't think we're getting coach speak this week. I truly think he has a huge respect for their program, very senior heavy this year, and what Jeff Lebby's doing for the program. So what I wanted to basically, kind of put out there for you is to let you know about what we're going to be facing this weekend in Cowbell Hell, as I like to call it, in Starkville. The things that Jeff Lebby has done with his program going forward as we go into this game on Saturday. Scott, what are you thinking as far as if Mississippi State is doing their job on Saturday to beat the Georgia Bulldogs? What are they doing effectively?
So Mississippi State is a space and pace type team. And when I say that, it's from an art coach by the name of Art Briles. And the whole thing is spacing out defenders, getting them isolated and attacking vertically and doing it in succession. So you're getting a play everywhere from 16 to every 20 seconds that drags you into deep waters early. It gets your snap count really high defensively. So that's something that Georgia, obviously, they're in great conditioning shape. It's having your head on a swivel during that entire progression because it can be simple concepts. But if you fail to execute, if you're not the deepest man, Ja'Cory Thomas, if you're not the deepest man, Zion Branch, that's where Mississippi State's really going to have a lot of success because they're going to test you in the run game too. They're going to keep you honest, but they're going to make those island matchups, is what I like to call them. When you're one-on-one with a defender or, you have an isolated route, they're going to really make you pay if you don't pay attention and cover your man. The other thing too, it's called the veer and shoot. Same thing, space and pace ideology. People have some weird misnomer that means teams are a little more finesse. Mississippi State's a really, really physical team. I think you perfectly laid out. Look, this is a team by less than 7-point margins could be in the front seat to be the fourth or fifth best SEC team.
Yep.
And so when you look at the rosters, what's even more incredible, you're talking about Texas, even though they've had offensive woes, their roster absolutely dominates Mississippi State's. No offense to the starting 22 on Mississippi State, but just in terms of depth, resources, and talent, Jeff Lebby's working with less. That doesn't mean they're less football players. It just means there's less talent. And I think that's where Mississippi State is really special in a way is, yeah, their defense is something I think that Georgia can be really efficient against and really exploit. And again, do the same thing to them by sequencing a lot of plays, dragging them deep into high snap counts early. But they're going to be physical the whole time. You're not going to get away. If your hat is not on the right side on some inside zone, they're going to punish you for it.
Yep.
They're going to try to push you back. Now, should you control them? Yes. But if you look at that Tennessee game, that Texas game, Mississippi State played them for a full 60 minutes. And really, flip of a coin here, a drop pass there, Mississippi State wins those games.
Yes. I sit there and think to myself about the games that I watched and evaluated and broke plays down to, especially like against Texas, one of the later games that they actually have played, fighting Arkansas down to the last wire as well and getting that win there in the last minute of the game. But I'm telling you, Texas sat in a lot of different zone concepts, switching pre-snap. And, Blake Shapen in that group, Anthony Evans, and I was trying to think of the other one that they have, Brennan Thompson, I think who the other one is. Those two guys are just wearing people out left and right. And what I saw from that was not just necessarily, just fluke plays where there was a breakdown in defense. These guys were dropping 7. They were dropping 8. They were bringing different kind of simulated pressures, but they were finding the wide open zones. And, Blake Shapen and Jeff Lebby's offense was finding those holes. They really exploited the zone. So, what I think about from Georgia's perspective, they do want to run some zone matchups, over-under matchups. They run basically what I call a cover 5 concept where it looks like cover 2, but they bring that extra, it's not necessarily always the nickel. It's the extra safety they put in the middle of the field to take care of the over-unders and to take care of the dig routes that come across. And so what I'm noticing, as you mentioned, Ja'Cory Thomas is kind of, to me, that weak link concept. And I'm going to say this, a lot of people don't want to hear this, but KJ Bolden, as much as we had the freshman phenom go out there and do some great things, if you really think about it, he's been silent this year. And, it's not necessarily something that I think is a bad thing, because typically if you're having to talk about your defensive backs like we have with Ja'Cory and even with Kyron pre-injury, I think it comes down to, why are we not talking about him enough? Is he not in plays enough to where he's helping the corner and man-to-man and coming over the top? You know what I would love to see finally at some point in juncture is an actual safety who is in zone, cover 2 high, and be actually helping their corner out in a man-on-man situation on the hip and actually come over the top and make the pick, similar to what Javon Bullard did for Dalen Everett back in the Ole Miss game a couple years ago at home. We just don't see that. It seems like we're always getting there late. We're not reading it well enough. And it seems when you're a deep zone guy, you've got to be deeper than the deepest guy. And we're finding ourselves a lot of times caught with our eyes in the backfield, and that discipline of having that coverage and having that right bracket with the correct defensive back that's in your zone or nickel that's in your zone that you're working to help bracket. We're just not seeing that execution that I would really like to see. So that worries me with the zone concept, because I think Blake could sit back there in the pocket. I think he does a really good job. Front line, they've got 3 seniors, 2 sophomores. I've watched to see if there's weak links. Honestly, I think they probably do about as well as what we've seen from Georgia's offensive line in holding up the pocket and doing a good job. They have busts just like other teams have busts. But what I notice is that they do a good job of calling out the mic. Their mic identification is solid. They work well on the backside of the islands when they've got one-on-one with the guard tackle away from the mic identification. Really, they're hurt sometimes in the run game schemes. But heck, like I said, who doesn't have those busts? But still, though, I really think that we are going to have to look into not running as much zone. And if we do, we've got to get pressure to Blake, because if he has the chance to sit back there and pick us apart in zone because we're getting no pass rush, maintaining those gaps, but yet not getting the havoc we want, I see him causing a lot of problems. And he can extend the play with his legs too. So that's something that we've got to be thinking about. And I know Jeff Lebby and that group is going to come after us for 4 quarters. They're a hungry football team playing at home. They got everything to work forward to. And I'm sure that team, regardless of what's in their head right now, are going to come out and play hard. And we've got to make sure we match that, the intensity that they're going to have, and over time begin to wear away. So to flip side that, what's Georgia got to do in order to finally put 4 quarters of football together, Scott?
I think last week you saw Georgia perform relatively well early on in offensive series, and then they would just either shoot themselves in the foot or they would stall at a critical moment. Now, some of those calls, those, again, things you can't handle, but they were finally able to gather up after a major play by the defense. Those, I call them trigger plays. Those where momentum is reset, and now it's potentially massively in your favor. Georgia's offense and Georgia as a team has been able to exploit that really well. But that critical play comes at the middle of the game, the back half of the game, and that's when Georgia really comes alive. Mississippi State's a really, really dangerous team. I fully agree. There's no coach speak this week. I think people who really understand and been looking at the film is like, look, this is the reason the SEC is so dangerous as a conference. All the national media pundits are hand waving away Mississippi State. They're saying, oh, gee shucks, Georgia going to Mississippi State weekend. We won't put them at prime time. But understand, Mississippi State's considering themselves as a real contender in every single game that they're playing. And so if I'm Georgia, what I'm trying to do is starve Mississippi State's offense by having my offense be consistent in the run game, keep drives alive, execute at a high level. I'd love to see a mixture of Chauncey, Bowens a little earlier, and Nate Frazier having a good day, getting just 30 yards. And a team that's as physical as Mississippi State, it really comes down to a who won it. It's a who won it kind of game in terms of physicality. Now, Georgia has a talent discrepancy here. They're a more talented team, but a lot of those cleanup busts, Georgia really can't afford to have that, because Mississippi State will be nipping at your heels. And before you know it, yeah, you're Georgia. You pulled away in the 4th quarter, but this is a game to finally set the tone of, look, we control the game. You don't have to run away with it. Now, as a fan, I surely would love it. My heart rate would too, my blood pressure, but you need to just control the things that you can and don't overthink and under execute because you're overthinking. I think Gunner needs to I think he did relatively well, but he's got to hit those deep shots. I think Bobo's been drawing those up really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
I think the receivers really need to have a sit down with the coach and say, Bell, for example, hey, coach, that's on me. I don't know why I eased up on that route.
Mm-hmm.
Receiver makes the wrong break. He goes middle of the post instead of the hash. Oh, man, that's on me. Noah Thomas has got to catch the ball. It really does come down to those simple things. Like schematically, schemes are schemes. We can talk X's and O's, but ultimately comes down to doing the simple things. It's the reason Kirby Smart is just so fundamentally ingrained in all that. And I think Mississippi State's a good test to reset mentally, to try to find that trigger moment early. It doesn't have to be a massive play. It just has to be a critical play.
Yes. You said it very well when it comes down to it, because I think the smaller things are what we're not seeing, and it's just the simple execution of plays. You think about, we get a couple of holes that basically takes drives away from us. We have the Noah Thomas on the in route dig that bounces right off his hands into a would-be defender and causes an interception for Gunner and adds to those stats. But I think Gunner, relatively, what I love about him, no matter what we see week in and week out, he doesn't turn the ball over. He's very understanding of what he's got to do in order to put us in good play design that's going to help us be productive. And that's something that I kind of see back to the way Coach Smart talked about Jake Fromm in the same way. Jake would always put us in good plays. Not necessarily was he doing anything dynamically throwing the football, but he placed the ball well when he meant to throw. And he always got if he had to change the mic identification and move it over to where he wanted to run away from certain front that he had or something like that, he always seemed to do a good job with that. And I'm seeing Gunner begin to do that as well. It comes down to the fact of the run game. I'm with you on that. Chauncey, Nate, even Dwight, whatever they decide to do with that running game, it needs to be in a situation where we are trying our best to not, I don't know, deter away from it. Very similar to what we did against Kentucky. My thing is when you are establishing the run game that sets up the RPO, that sets up the play action, and who doesn't want that? A lot of people think it isn't sexy anymore to line up in 12 personnel, even 13 personnel, run split action, play action, where you've only got split zone play action, and you've only got 3 receivers in the route. But yet, Mike Bobo dials it up more than any person I've ever seen and schemes guys open, even with 3 receivers off play action. And we've got to be able to hit that. Just the Talon Taylor shot against Alabama was a 3 receiver progression out of split zone play action. So, it's the same principle. The little things need to be effectively done better. And I think that's what changes us from being a 1 or 2 quarter team to all of a sudden you see us in the first and second quarter sustain drives, not have the holding penalty that kills the drive, those kinds of things. But it all comes down, just like every week, you've got to run the ball efficiently against a team that really wants to stop the run. And when you do that, to me, it's like a snowball effect. If the run game progresses and does its job, then all of a sudden you're going to see the play action RPO game open up. And now all of a sudden your playbook gets a little bit bigger. And that's something that's got to happen this weekend regardless. Because if there's one thing that Mississippi State is lacking in, unfortunately, as you said a while ago, they're a little bit shallow on the defensive side of the ball. We should be able to lean on them pretty well, and we should keep chopping, doing our job. And I think over time we're going to see that happen. And I would definitely love to see them go out there and execute and see a 4-quarter ball game, like you said, where your heart rate's a little bit less as the game goes on. Let's talk about somebody that you might think is who do you think would be someone that's going to stand out in this game for Georgia?
I think 2 people have the ability to stand out here. One thing I will say about Gunnar Stockton, that's always going to be my number one. Honestly, his ability he's just a true football player. He also trickle downs his emotional state in a game, no matter, I know we were previously talking about this. He gets hit, he gets up, he shakes it off. It does not affect him. At no point in the game do you see him get frustrated, murmur anything under his breath. He's just constantly about business. He's looking over the sideline, getting the next call in, hand on the cup of the ear. Hey, look, getting the play and getting that coach talk to him. He's my number one from here on out because, fortunately or unfortunately, however you think about it, Georgia seems to be a more offensive-led team, and they feed off of that.
Yeah.
And Gunnar is the motor that makes that offense go.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a lot more dynamic in certain aspects that we kind of hand wave away. Last week, we were talking about being able to make a play that should have only gotten 2 yards or should have got to the line of scrimmage, making that a 3 to 4 to 5 yard gain. Gunnar's been exceptional in that when it comes down to, okay, pass pro broke down, or hey, they sent a good blitz and they just tricked us. We weren't able to identify and get men in the right, set up to stop it. He can eat you with his legs. Now, you don't want to see that too much because that means things aren't going right the other way.
Yep.
But a mixture of him and Chauncey having that steady ability to put that defense in a bind, and now you're dragging them, like you said, into deep waters, and they're already shallow. That's Georgia's bread and butter. It's been Georgia's a play action team. They eat people alive at it. 90% of the time, they're really, really good at it. And this year is no different. But it all hinges on, can you run the ball on knowing running downs? Meaning it's 1st and 10. They're likely to do this down distance field position kind of situation where they say, oh, look, they're going to run the ball likely. You do it and you still get 4 yards.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say Chauncey and Gunnar on offense. I think C.J. Allen's going to have another amazing day. I think if we're going to simulated looks, if we're going to, run zone, like you said, we got to get to Blake. I mean, he has been really, really impressive at identifying holes in zone, which is something Gunnar early on kind of struggled with, is analyzing, man goes away, where's that window coming open at?
Right.
He's been absolutely excellent in that. And he has 2 really, really good receivers, a former Georgia receiver and Anthony Evans, that have been able to help him identify those things and sitting in those zones really, really well. The only way you can mitigate that, you cannot leave your DBs out on islands for too long. They can't be passing guys off for 6 to 7 seconds. So someone's going to have to really step up and make sure they're getting after Blake. I know, hopefully I don't pronounce his name too wrong. Nnamdi?
Yeah, Nnamdi Boko.
Nnamdi, thank you. I apologize, Nnamdi, if you hear this. He's got to have an exceptional game. I know he's a redshirt freshman, but those young guys that are finally getting their snap counts, going above 1 to 2 late, especially unfortunately because Jordan Hall is not going to be available for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
Those guys have to really face, and like you said, a gritty, tough offensive line that identifies things properly, rarely has major busts. They do, but that's the thing that's got to be the major exception defensively is we got to start seeing pressures. I don't need sacks. I just need Blake to get off the spot, make him move while thinking.
Well said, my friend. Feel bad for Jordan Hall. Worked so hard to get back. Titanium tibias in both legs, and season-ending injury that puts him in a situation where he's going to be in a support role for the rest of the season. I can't think of anything better to say other than what I would love to see on the defensive side of the ball is I hope that Zion Branch challenged Ja'Cory Thomas's position this week. I would really like to see a shakeup in the secondary. DeMelo Jones, from what I understand, is not as significant of an injury as what they originally thought it was. So we'll see what happens in their rotations there. But I think Zion Branch, because you think about it, the sample size we get to see is only against in the game. We don't get to see practices weekly. But I've seen enough of Ja'Cory Thomas on film over 8 games that I'm okay with that. I sit there and look at Zion Branch in one game, and I get that one sample size after KJ Bolden goes out for the unintentional. I'm always going to call it unintentional targeting because just trying to come up and make a tackle and gets basically penalized for that. But I saw enough from Zion Branch in that one, basically a half and a little bit of a quarter, enough to where I think he should be challenging Ja'Cory for some more playing time. There's just something about what I saw in that helps me solidify the fact that he should be out there. So I would love to see a breakout game from someone that we haven't seen something from, whether it be in the secondary, at that nickel level, wherever it may be. We've got to have some secondary step up because Blake and them are going, like you said, if we don't get him off his spot and he's throwing the football around the yard, we've got to be able to make plays in the defensive secondary, and that's something that we haven't done. But I do think what you said is very true with Nnamdi being in there because I evaluated him from the Florida game. There was a lot of good things I saw. He is a space eater. He can't be moved in double teams. His feet need to be a little bit better, but when he's got one-on-one, he does a hell of a job of getting off that. And I like what I see from him. And I think he's someone that we need to continue to look at doing and putting in those positions to see if we can all of a sudden have that surprise aha moment with him there at the zero tech or on the shade, wherever he may be at. Mike, I'm not sure what you're meaning on that. What kind of injury is that? What I can't recall. You talking about?
He's talking about Jordan Hall with the titanium tibias.
Oh, yeah.
Jordan Hall has been through it, and honestly, prayers up for the young man.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you how hard it is to come back from a single injury in college ball, especially at a high level like Georgia plays, and then to have the year he's had in final, because he's technically really a young football player if you think about it. He's had a lack of snaps. He's trying to get back into the physicality of the game. But we were referring to Jordan Hall with the tibia injuries and having titanium already in his body, and now he has another season-ending injury 8 games in.
Yeah. To add to it as well, what I think we need to see with Kobe Young's injury and get a chance to get back to those maybe, preseason spring vibes of maybe seeing some CJ Wiley back out there, maybe seeing, they tried to go something with Landon Roldan, on that long shot that if Gunner puts it more towards the numbers, towards the outside of the hash instead of straight down the middle of the field, I think Landon has a chance to run underneath that. It kind of was similar to what I saw. Of course, it's a little bit of an opposite play, but with Landon wearing number 84, you sit there, I kind of think back to the Auburn game at Jordan-Hare, a few years ago back where, McConkey had himself a day in Auburn Stadium that day. But, that's the kind of things that need to come down to the execution part. All of a sudden, we're talking about a completely different ball game if those things can be solidified and executed out. So that's going to be the key to me, Scott, as we move through these 4 quarters and all the fans that are out there trying to question when are we going to see that 4-quarter game? I think we are a very small margin away from seeing that because of the little things that you've got to take care of. People don't realize the microcosms that come into just the execution level that you want to have for your offense and for your defense as well. So I think those are very good points. I would love to be able to see someone that we're talking about in our, when we do our rapid reaction after the game on Saturday. I really am excited to just anticipate who we're going to be talking about that we have no clue right now is the person of the day, what I call the flavor of the week. But, CJ Allen needs to continue his play consistently, and Gunner just being Gunner, doing what he's doing, the moxie that he has at quarterback and rallying his team around him. They're beginning to take on the personality of 14, and that's a beautiful thing to see. What I wanted to show you real quick, we're going to do about a 5-minute break here where me and Scott are going to take a step back. I did a small breakdown that's part of my Patreon, about a 30-minute video that I broke down on Mississippi State's offense. I thought I would share with you about 5 minutes of that as a couple of plays, just to get an idea of just sort of the scheme and personnel that you see offensively. I just did 2 offensive plays. And yes, that is true. Number 3 for Mississippi State is Anthony Evans III, former Georgia Bulldog that went into the portal this past year and is having a great year, along with the other gentleman, Brendan Thompson, and over 1,300 yards receiving, Shapen obviously over 2,000 yards. And you're going to see this veer and shoot, as Scott mentioned a while ago, Jeff Lebby's offense and what it can do, especially against a Texas team that was playing a lot of zone against them. So we'll be back on the flip side here in just a second. Mississippi State has had some success throughout the course of this year. I mean, they're 2 games away from having basically a fighting chance for the playoffs, honestly. When you look at Tennessee coming in there and they barely escaping with a win, Texas coming in there and having a win in overtime, Jeff Lebby has got this team playing very well, but it's all built around their offense and Blake Shapen. You got Brendan Thompson, number 0, and as you may know, Anthony Evans from Georgia, from the transfer portal last year, is also a receiver for them. Between Brendan Thompson and between Anthony Evans, they have over 1,300 yards receiving. Between them, Blake Shapen's throw for over 2,000. And against Texas, to me, which to me, their defensive secondary is very similar to ours. They're just as willing to give up plays as any other defense is. I like this play concept call because he runs a form of the veer and shoot. He spreads the field out to expand your guys out, but he wants you to play in the box as well. So here we've got Lucky Zip, and they're going to end up running 7-51 shallow. So you're going to get the shallow route coming across to hold all your middle second-level players, and the dig's going to come open behind it with Anthony Evans right here. And Blake throws a really good football on this play. So I'm going to let it play out for you and let you see just after it's set up. I'm watching the front, and we got a slide route protection, so the F-back is going to, off this option, feel and get out on the shoot route. I mean, they do a pretty good job up front. I'm looking at their offensive line, and there's not really, to me, a place where I'm just sitting there going, they're weak in that position. I think they move their feet very well. I think they communicate their mic responsibilities very well. If there's anything that I've noticed, it's the left guard that tends to have some pass breakdowns, but it's typically when the mic protection is away from him or him and the tackle are on an island. But you can see here Blake throwing the ball across the middle here. Of course, it's wide open right over the top of the umpire. And there's Anthony Evans with an explosion. See, more teams need to pay attention to this kind of stuff right here. So I don't know if you always had. I had an analyst that would always watch with me as a defensive coordinator if you had unbalanced sets or plays where you basically covered a receiver up, because a lot of times that gave tendency to whether you were going to run the football or not. Here we are in what I call early yap nasty. So you got a tight end with a connected H. So that's yap. That's what I call for a yap concept, and I yap tag whatever side it goes to. And it's nasty because the H, instead of sitting on the outside cheek of the tight end, he's actually down inside almost in B gap. And what it looks like they're running here is more or less, I was thinking ISO with a fan, but they're running it with the H leading up in there, and it almost looks like wham. But typically when you wham someone, you are bypassing a down lineman that you're going to wham with the H-back. And because they basically block everybody up front, I really think this is just an H insert ISO fan. So realistically, your linemen are blocking outwardly like a fan, and your H-back is going to come down inside and take play side linebacker on this. But typically with ISO, you have a double team at the point of impact, and they don't show that here. So I'm really curious to know whether this is just H insert on a wham play or whether they're running a true fan ISO play right here. But still, this little kid, 6', Davin Booth is his name. He's squeaky, man. He'll find ways to find those holes. You got Hill coming up to make this. Okay, so we watch the front up top. So the tight end 10 is going to step out. You're going to get 76 to work the fan. 75 was going to double team, but since he goes outside, he's trying to climb to the backer. And you got your center taking the zero tech to his side, just taking him out of the play. So there's the fan on one side. 61 stepping out, 77 stepping out. There's your fan. And number 8's coming down inside on the insert. All right. And because you have two backers in this case scenario, what you want is typically one of those guys coming off to the other linebacker. So to me, he blocks the right guy. They should be ISO in 18. Okay. But what's got to happen is somebody's got to get off the double and get up to the other linebacker. But because he's good at reading cloudy clear fits, he's getting up inside. But guess what? Hill guesses wrong. He steps on one side of the blow up block right there where 8 flat heads 18, and 6 turns it the other way, and now Hill's blocked, and there's a long run right there. So very unique run design. I love it. I love the ISO concept. I think it needs to be brought back to the game of football. It's an OG play that I really like. And this is something, again, that I really have a lot of respect for Mike Levy's run game. Excuse me, not Mike Levy. I was thinking Mike Elko. Jeff Lebby's run game against Texas here. I think there was a lot of good things that we see from. So just a couple of things just to sit there and let you chew and munch on that. Like I said, the full breakdown is on my Patreon. I have over 35 minutes worth of offensive play breakdown against Texas. I really thought that was a good outlier for us to look at and what Mississippi State brings to the table, other than the fact that I can't remember that Jeff Levy is the head coach there at the end. But still, nonetheless, Scott, I'm going to put you on the spot here. I want to. Do you think we have another game similar to, say, Florida, Auburn, lower scoring game, or do you think where do you think the score is going to end up being? What do you think we're going to do against Mississippi State?
I think Georgia's kind of in the range of 31, 34 points offensively, and defensively is where a lot of my concerns are. Like you said, that offset, H-back, isolation. Everyone does their job except one linebacker guesses wrong and jumps in the opposite A gap. And you saw how that running back was able to find it. That is Mississippi State's bread and butter, both offensively, running the ball and passing the ball. You give them that little bit of window and zone, they're going to punch you. That's why C.J. Allen has to have a really good day, because those are gimme plays we as fans don't think of when, oh, man, we stopped them on the run. Well, C.J.'s got to do that 10 more times. So that one mistake you have is an explosive, especially the veer and shoot. But 31 to 34 points offensively, I think Georgia can do that. They're hyper efficient, top 5 in the nation. In fact, I would say statistically and metric-wise, you need to start looking at this Georgia offense the same as Ole Miss is looked at. There's a lot of explosive tight margins. Mike Bobo even said against Florida, hey, look, man, we are this far away from busting out a run. And sure enough, on sweep, I mean, Oscar Delp just took that man and put him in another universe, which yes, I get it. It's a corner, but look, man, physicality beats all. Great play. Defensively, Georgia's going to have to figure out personnel, because I think me and you have talked about this ad nauseum. Look, the scheme is not the issue. The coaches can only call what the players can execute. And I hate to keep dogging on Ja'Cory Thomas, but Zion Branch provides a lot more at that position. And I think Lebby is so good offensively, he's going to test you over and over and over and over. And that's where this Georgia defense has struggled. Now, with personnel switches, you can still have some woes, you can still have some issues, but I think you get provided such a better and new look. And I understand why Kirby doesn't rush to it. I get it. We as fans don't know what the heck we're talking about 90% of the time. But Nnamdi, he's got to have an explosive day, which I think he can. I studied him a little bit on film, exactly like you. Get him in an isolated matchup, I think he can do some dangerous things. Chris Cole's got to have a good day too. Yeah. That Trinidad play still haunts me, because I honestly believe if we sack Trinidad there and Ole Miss has to settle for a field goal, I think, again, those are the momentum and tone setters that Georgia thrives on.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to give a definitive one, but I'd say anywhere from 31, 34 offensively, and unfortunately anywhere from 27 to 30 defensively, all the way down to 17.
Yeah.
But it all depends on that new personnel.
I fit the same mentality. I kind of feel like it's sort of like the Kentucky game with the execution where it could be at. I've called it out to be 34-21 is my thought process. I think they're going to score some points, but I think it's going to be sporadic and one of their scores is going to be late. I feel like we're going to have control of the ball game, but it all comes down to the execution of offense that we have talked about this entire session and each segment. And if we execute at the level we know we can, I think we're going to have good control of the ball game. And even though the score may be a little bit closer than we think, it's just due to the fact that we have what we want. We've worked our way with the clock, running the football. We've executed at times to get a couple of passing plays that maybe set us up for short runs for touchdowns, or maybe we do have a passing completion for a touchdown as well. But it just seems to me that what I want to be able to see is that consistency that puts us in a situation in the fourth quarter where we have control of the ball game, and it's not something where we're just waiting to read and react with what's going on. I was going to address Doug. Doug Hartline and I went to school together. He reminded me the years you were at North Murray and what years Ladd was there. When I left, Ladd was going to be a freshman that year. I had coached him and helped him through his middle school years at Bagley, through his 6th, 7th, and 8th grade year. Hinton, his older brother, was my quarterback for his sophomore, junior, and senior year. So I had the opportunity to coach his older brother as well, but I was really good friends with the McConkeys while I was there. Benji and Brittany, their mom and dad. Brittany taught at North Murray, and Benji obviously was a big supporter of our program and loved the McConkey family when I was there, and honestly kept up with Ladd's career as he went through high school as well, because I knew that kid was going to be special. But just an awesome opportunity to coach a lot of quality kids at North Murray, not just the McConkey kids. Those were some good years that I was there, but it would have been from 2013 till 2017 were the years that I was there. Scott, we're going to move on to the next segment here. We obviously know on Tuesday we had the college football committee, the selection committee, basically solidified the top 25 for us on Tuesday. And I was just curious to see, with Georgia ranked at the 5th spot, looking at all the teams here in the top 25, I just wanted to get your thoughts on what they got right, or if there was anything you thought that made you scratch your head.
So I think 95% of this is right. There's some lower tier teams that are ranked in some odd, sequences, but again, that's just part and parcel of it. At some point, you get kind of to where you're being really nitpicky with the resume. Georgia fans, look, we are in the best position of any team, point blank, period. And I'll tell you why. Ohio State was in it. You have that home game to initial off. You play it if you're 6th or 5th, you play 11 or 12. And that's not to diminish an 11th or 12th team. They can beat you. If they made it to the playoffs, all those teams, given the right sequence and the right play and your lack of physicality, lack of discipline, they can really exploit that. I want Georgia to stay in the 5th spot or 6th spot at worst. And I think it is a great situation to be in, especially with this team, especially with the team's mentality. Just to go into something that a lot of people seemed confused on with Miami. Understand, guys, Miami lost to SMU, and yeah, they beat Notre Dame, but Notre Dame has tight margins with a 3rd-ranked Texas A&M team. So it's stuff like that that the committee thinks of. They don't say, well, look, early on they did this. It's all in totality.
Yep.
So just remember that when you start going through the rankings. But honestly, of the teams I think have a legitimate shot to compete for a title or at least make it to the semis or quarters, I think they've done a really good job this time.
I did too. Believe it or not, for the first bracket ever, I really thought they did a good job of looking at not only the totality of the season, the quality of the wins, the head-to-head, and a lot of these are going to play out because Texas Tech and BYU actually play on Saturday. I think Texas Tech, David Bailey, I think he leads the nation in sacks. I think he has somewhere around 12 sacks. It's kind of unique. You look at Damon Wilson, who plays with Missouri. I think he's in the top 5 in the SEC in sacks. I know we definitely would love to have that this year. We don't, but, it's like I said, good for him, what he's doing at Missouri. But the only thing that I really think there might need to be a rearrangement, and I know we're giving it to Ohio State by default, but I think right now the way Indiana's playing, their resume, I think Indiana would put belt to ass to Ohio State right now. And I know why they've got Ohio State at 1 and Indiana at 2, but based off what I've seen in play, because if you think about it, the only significant win that really Ohio State has is Texas, and I don't know if that's really can hold water to it based off how Texas has played. Texas and Oklahoma are in those hot seats right there because there's somebody that's going to be put out there, because we watched the group of 5 team right now that's fit to that 12 spot would be Memphis, which is who Georgia would play in the first round at home. Even though they're basically saying you wouldn't be playing for an SEC championship. Alabama right now and Texas A&M are primed to be the SEC, the partnership in the SEC championship. Texas A&M has a game on the road this week with Missouri. Alabama still has LSU, Oklahoma, and the voodoo game of Auburn as well, and it's back at Jordan-Hare this time, if I'm not mistaken. So,
It is.
So there's a lot of things left on this board, which is what's cool. But I think for the first time ever, I'm not really sitting there scratching my head over the top 25 look, because I really think they did a good job on totality, their resume, head to head, and that's the reason why you see them where they're at with the 3, 4, 5, and 6 seed all fitting in there very well. BYU, Texas Tech will probably do a flip flop, because I really think Texas Tech is a better football team than BYU. Some people don't agree with me on that. But, I look at I look at Ohio State's schedule, and I sit here and look at it. Texas, Grambling, Ohio, Washington, Minnesota, Illinois, Wisconsin, Penn State. They've got Purdue, UCLA, Rutgers, and Michigan. I mean, you look at that and you're just going, wow. I mean, they were very anemic against a Penn State team at home. They can't seem to beat Michigan, and this year it's up in Ann Arbor. So, I sit there and think, is this the time where we really need to get all hot and heavy about, what the team is at this point in juncture? I mean, Ohio State lost to Michigan late in the season, but got hot at the right time. And that's the reason why I agree with you, Scott. I think where we're at right now, if Alabama and Texas A&M wins out, we win out. We don't play in the SEC championship, but we're still sitting right there at that 5 spot, playing the number 12 team coming in. I'm highly in favor for that, honestly, based off what we've had to deal with this year in SEC play. So I like what you said there as well. I think, honestly, it looks good across the board. And like I said, there's going to be a shakeup after this weekend as well. So we'll see what happens after Saturday play takes care of itself. All right, Scott, we're going to have a little fun with this one right here. I've been tired of listening to Big Ten fans talk, and my mentality is to quit speculating, to quit sitting there looking at the transitive properties. By God, let's line down 16 teams, SEC to Big Ten. And I couldn't even put, the Big Ten has actually got 18 teams in the conference. We have 16 teams. So what I did is, unfortunately, Purdue, you and Wisconsin, y'all are not even in the mix right here. I cannot believe that I'm putting a Northwestern team and a Rutgers team as a higher seed overall than your Wisconsins of the world and your Purdues of the world, honestly. Because typically, if you look at, past history, those teams typically were solid football teams, nothing crazy, but better than what we're seeing this year. What I did is I paired them up by their seeds. You got Ohio State, Texas A&M, Indiana, Alabama. I won't read them all out, but you can see the team that's on the left would be the home team because they're the higher seed. So I sit here and look at this, and I want to put them side by side for you as a fan, whether you're a Big Ten fan, SEC fan, and I'm not even trying to be a homer right here, because here's Georgia playing Oregon at home. Dan Lanning comes to Sanford Stadium. I would pay good money they do it in basketball. I would pay good money just to see this come to fruition and just have a little fun with it now. And I'm interested, Scott, as you sit here and sort of overlook it. I see the small grin on your face. I would love to just get your thoughts on what you think of the totality of this and where it would go, and what you thought maybe on your percentages of wins here by each team.
So something Big Ten fans seem to not grasp is that no SEC fan or no fan of a serious SEC contender, the Georgias, the Bamas, the Ole Miss in the recent years, they fully admit and concede, look, Ohio State, some of these other teams like the Indianas of this year, they are elite. No one's saying that you don't have an elite team, but you're insanely top heavy. And this kind of just lays out exactly how a conference to conference, head to head hypothetical should work. It shouldn't be Ohio State could beat anybody, and so the conference is better. It's not how it works. You're one of 18. Same with Indiana. So let's start at the top left real quick with Ohio State A&M. Let's say Ohio State wins it. We'll just grant that right now. We'll give the Big Ten that. We'll even give a 50-50 or a 51-49 to Indiana over Alabama, which I'm not sold on. I think Alabama does a great job with offensive efficiency. I think they eat people alive and don't get offenses a lot of opportunities. And I think that'd be a new spot for Indiana, especially with the talent Alabama has roster-wise as they're getting better at certain things they were deficient in.
I would love to see that defense against Mendoza, no doubt.
Oh, for sure. I think that'd be a really good matchup. But Georgia at home versus Oregon, I don't even know the most staunch Big Ten fan that'd say, oh, yeah, that's an Oregon win. I think everyone would lean towards Georgia, and rightfully so. Ole Miss, SC comes down to Ole Miss. I think that's another one you got to say, okay, if we're being unbiased here, which not a lot of fans are, especially Big Ten fans, since they won 2 back-to-back titles as a conference, which apparently means every football snap that happened prior to 2023 just doesn't count. Then Texas, Michigan. I'm not a transitive property guy, but you saw how Oklahoma played Michigan and controlled the whole game. I think that'd be the same thing here. Yeah, Texas' offense has had some woes, up and downs, but I think they have found kind of a nice medium. Again, I don't think Arch comes out and has an explosive game every week from here on out, but I think you see the potential there for Texas to be what they should have been early on. I mean, Texas had a legitimate shot to tie Ohio State early on, and I get it. Ohio State fans have a legitimate statement here. Hey, look, we didn't put too much on Julian's shoulders. Okay, that's fine. Understand the same was with Arch, and Arch played abysmal. There are a lot of open, deep overs that Arch literally skipped the ball off the ground. And man, you're making me defend Texas in any way. It makes me sick to my stomach. But Texas over Michigan here, Oklahoma over Washington. Vanderbilt, Iowa. Okay, Iowa's got a really good defense, but here's the thing: that Vanderbilt offense can drag the Iowa defense into a lot of snap count because Iowa's offense is not relatively, I don't even know if they know what a first down is most of the time. So Missouri, Illinois, okay. I mean, you got to kind of say, again, maybe let's go 50-50 here. But just in the first column, you have Big Ten 1, Big Ten 2, SEC, 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 50-50 on the bottom. I mean, this is where the whole argument to me falls apart is SEC is dangerous because of the talent. The talent disparity doesn't really exist in the SEC nearly the degree it does in the Big Ten. I don't know any Big Ten fan would argue, oh, yeah, this Big Ten team outside of Indiana is comparable talent-wise to Ohio State. Out of what, Oregon? Maybe. In the SEC, and a perfect example would be LSU this year and Mississippi State this year. Oh, their record, this is so bad. This is that. It's awful. They have the talent to beat you, though. That's the problem, is if you hand wave away them and set into your unconscious player mind here of, oh, we're going to go out there, roll helmet, and we're going to be fine. You cannot do that. Florida, if they played as good as that roster is, would end the season 9-3. I'd bet $1,000 on it. They just unfortunately had a head coach named Billy Napier. Penn State, South Carolina. Okay, South Carolina can drag good teams into deep waters. And again, I get it. Big Ten fans rushed to week 1. Bama got their butt kicked by Florida State. And Florida State ain't worth nothing.
Yeah.
Recall an Ohio State team got the tail whipped by Virginia Tech when they were a title contender. Yep. Crazy things happen. UCLA ruined Penn State's season, and every Big Ten fan told me, this is it. This is Penn State's year, despite the fact that Franklin has 4 top 10 wins under his entire resume.
Yep.
Then you go to Kentucky, Rutgers. Look, I'm going to be honest. At that point, I don't care because the rest of the resume tells me enough. Arkansas would score all over Michigan State, but Michigan State may find a way to win if Arkansas gives in. But Arkansas has been playing a lot better with a coaching change. The only criticism that I've heard from Big Ten fans that holds some water is, well, if you have all this talent, your coaching just sucks. And my argument to that is that would make sense if they were playing Rutgers and Maryland and UCLA and losing with those talent, but they're playing other talented teams. And again, last year, I will fully tip the cap to Ohio State. You hit the momentum at the perfect time. That $20, $30, $40 million roster, how anyone wants to spill the rumor, played to its potential. Great. Tell me then why Texas, the SEC runner-up, was a goal line mistake away from making that a legitimate ball game. Because then if we use transit properly, we could turn around and say, well, Arizona State, they're a targeting call away from. That's the point. The margins are tighter now than ever.
Yep.
And again, congratulations on winning 2 back-to-back titles as a conference, much less one team.
Right.
But do not mistake. And here's the other thing. I'm not big on superstition, but I'm big enough on it. The number 1 team coming out of the first playoff bracket typically does not end the season that way. And
Well
so I'm absolutely like you. I'm so glad you read that schedule off, because the Big Ten, I can't even call it cheating. It's just being smart. You look at their contenders' schedules, and it'll make you sick to your stomach. And the SEC seems to be doing the opposite, because, like you said, Alabama had their test against Georgia. 4 ranked teams, they passed the test. As much as I hate giving them credit, you got to give them credit. Georgia, the schedule this year is a lot easier than last year. It's only easier where you play, not who you play. A lot of these teams Georgia's playing this year are better than they were last year. Minus what? Ole Miss?
Minus Ole Miss.
So, again, I hate conference championing. I hate it because, honestly, I hope every SEC team loses that's not named Georgia every Saturday. But I got to be honest. The talent down in the Southeastern Conference is at a different level. That does not take anything away from the Big Ten. That doesn't say Indiana's not playing elite football. Ohio State's not playing really, really well. But the idea that this is just a runaway with these 2 teams baffles me, especially when you see week in, week out. Because just 2 weeks ago, Miami was a shoo-in for the title. Oh, they've already won the ACC.
Yep.
Clemson ain't no good. And then you see what happens.
Yep.
These margins are super tight. And when you have 2 talented teams, especially styles make fights, again, that's where I like Alabama's chances against Indiana. The way they play football really imposes a lot of issues for a lot of teams. So I'm so glad you did this, because this is honestly the only way, if anyone's going to be a legitimate critic of both conferences, can do this. You got to put the number 1 SEC versus number 1 Big Ten. Number 2, number 3, number 2, number 3, number 3. That's it. That's the only way to do it.
Well said across the board. I couldn't have said it any better. The only thing that I'm going to take from it is I look at it on a percentage scale. I'm one of those that makes it real simple. I see about 75% of the wins coming from the SEC, no doubt, with maybe 25% of the wins coming from the Big Ten. And honestly, when you look at the top 6 groups, I look basically down from Texas A&M down to Oklahoma. I think all of those will be great football games, because I do think that those level teams do bring something to the table. But once you leave realistically the top 6 groups and look at the bottom 12, all right, to me, that's where the difference of the athletes come into play. And to me, every one of those Big Ten teams that you see are out-athleted, regardless of the dumpster fire of what they're dealing with in their administrations right now, such as Florida, such as Arkansas, such as Auburn, that are dealing with new head coaches or interim head coaches right now while they find a new head coach to be put into place. I mean, my God, you think about it. Over the last, month, we've had 5 Power 4 coaches fired, 4 of them from the SEC. And so even with those things being said, I still think you roll the ball out on the 50-yard line and you say play ball. I think the athletes take over in those games, and I really do think we look at it a 75 to 80% chance of winning the majority of those games. And that's where I look at it from a totality standpoint, because I'm kind of with you. I don't tend to root for an SEC team that is not Georgia, that because I just want the conference to be good. I want Georgia to be good, but I also want to see quality football being played as well. And to me, this would be the best way to disassociate some of the delusion that I hear from Big Ten fans to say, by God, let's just look at your ranking right now and let's just line up, line down, and let's just, light the matchstick and just see what happens. So when I look at it as well, I just think it's very SEC heavy. So if you look at the totality of the conference, that's where this whole argument kind of sits. It's not about us being a homer because we like the University of Georgia. I sit there and look at Oregon. I sit there and think them having to to fly all the way across to the East Coast and getting in Sanford Stadium, and Dan Lanning trying to get his team ready to go, saying, the history here of what I've been through and those kinds of things. I think it will be a hell of a ball game. But when it's all said and done, based on their resumes this year, and the beauty of that is the parity that we see in college football today, honestly, this to me would be so gratifying in so many ways because it would shut a lot of people up, first off. But secondly, I think for the most part, we would see some quality football being played. And, in the process, see those athletes that we talk about just being basically our Joes are just better than your Joes in this situation and taking care of business. So I definitely appreciate your reflection on that, Scott. It's good stuff. And, we'll just have to see. Maybe someday down the road, Pat and Penny did, that we can have some kind of Big Ten SEC matchup, which I know would never happen in our wildest dreams, but we can think about it anyway. Appreciate you guys being a part of the show tonight. I've noticed over on the side a lot of comments that have been in here. Appreciate you following along with us. We're always enjoying the time that we can be together and be able to talk a little shop, talk a little X's and O's, talk about what we're looking about in the analysis of what's coming in the near future. And, of course, a lot of good solid football on Saturday. As part of my breakdown, as you saw through the middle of the program, for those of you who might be interested, part of my Patreon at Coach Hayes Huddle, you can go in and you can see live breakdowns. You can see the analytics. I do recruit breakdowns as well. And I definitely want you to be a part of what we're about to establish. And this is something that I'm kind of just saying out loud right now, but we're going to be creating something, me and Scott working together, of a podcast called Head on a Swivel. And what I'd like to do is to be able to have Scott in here for us to be able to do the rapid reactions for the Saturday games, then do the analysis on Monday like we do, and then have a preview show for the Saturday's game as well. I've enjoyed Scott on the show. I think he brings heavy insight, not only to just helping fans connect, but also too just has that logistical common sense approach as a fan, because I know we're going to fan. Fans are going to fan. We always do. But when it comes down to it, I feel like that he brings a very logical approach to the situation, and I appreciate his time on the show with me this evening. Scott, tell the people that are out there watching the show where they can find you at.
Well, I appreciate you having me, Coach. You can find me on Twitter at WSGreenJR. It's one of my Army photos, so if you see that, that's the right place to go. And one thing I just want to caveat in all this, guys, look, Georgia is extremely spoiled, both of what the product is on the field, but the media personnel surrounding the program. And to better appreciate the game and to be a better fan, the more film you watch or even listen to, you get a more appreciation for how good Georgia just really is. And so with all the personnel out there and all the media personalities, Coach Hayes is one of the best. He explains it in a lot of articulable ways where you're not having your head talked over. It's pretty arithmetic, it's pretty basic, and he makes complex situations and systems and schemes simple to understand by just breaking down the common sense aspects. So really, really emphasize, guys, look, get on the train early. I think Coach Hayes is going to do a really phenomenal job film breakdown. There's other people who do good job and good film, but here I think we're just going to approach it a little bit different, how we talk about things. And again, I'm just a fan at the end of the day. I know Coach Hayes would tell you, look, on Saturdays, I'm saying the most nonsensical stuff you have ever heard. And then I get 5 minutes, take a breather, and listen to old Scott Howard and WSB, and I'm back to reality. So don't feel bad for losing your mind, especially this year.
Yeah. Well, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show, Scott. And like I said, for those of you who have stuck around for the entire show, we can't thank you enough. We appreciate your patronage. As always, as part of the show that we do, you can reach me at www.coachhayeshuddle, spelled HUDL.com. You can go on there for commentary for all the videos that you want to see, and obviously through YouTube as well. But where you're going to see the majority of my breakdowns now and my analysis that I do, the more extensive work, is for my exclusive members through my Patreon group here that you can see on the screen with a QR code. And that is just basically patreon.com with a / Coach Hayes Huddle, and you will find me. But like I said, for Scott and myself, we appreciate you being with us tonight. As always, we love what we do. We have a passion to connect fans to the fundamentals of football. I hope you enjoyed the show this evening. Take care. God bless. And as always, go Dogs.
Go Dogs.